Myles Garrett's five-sack game should have been the story. Instead, it's what came after, the boiling point that shattered Cleveland's already fragile locker room. Garrett didn't hold back, openly blasting Kevin Stefanski over alleged favoritism and leadership blind spots. His fury wasn't just about bad calls or one-off frustrations. It was a full-scale rejection of how the Browns are being run. As rumors swirl of Philadelphia and New England circling for a blockbuster trade, the heart of Cleveland's defense looks ready to walk, or worse, explode the entire foundation on his way out.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
If Garrett goes, the Browns aren't just losing a generational pass rusher. They're exposing a leadership vacuum that can implode the franchise. Stefanski's refusal to budge on Dillon Gabriel despite his struggles is tearing at the seams of team culture. As players choose sides and trust evaporates, Garrett's potential departure looms like a warning shot. Fix the dysfunction or face total collapse. The Cleveland Browns are on fire, and not the good kind. We're talking about a slow-burning locker room collapse, kind of disaster, that starts at the very top and is trickling down like acid rain. And at the center of the storm, defensive end Myles Garrett, frustrated, fed up, and reportedly one explosive conversation away from walking out the door. Oh, and there are trade rumors too. Real ones, with actual price tags attached. So let's talk about what's happening inside the Browns' imploding house. It starts with what should have been a season of redemption. The Browns had the talent, the expectations, the momentum. But under the surface, fractures started forming. Head coach Kevin Stefanski, already walking a tightrope with fans and players, kept making one move that lit the fuse, standing firmly behind quarterback Dillon Gabriel, even when the offense was visibly struggling to keep it together. And that's when it got ugly. Myles Garrett, arguably the face of the franchise and the cornerstone of the Browns' defense, started making noise, and not just on the field. While the rest of the team was floundering, Garrett went nuclear. In the middle of a deeply frustrating season, he went off with a five-sack game, putting the entire league on notice. But his tone off the field? Not celebratory. Not even close. Reports started leaking. Garrett was furious. Not just disappointed. Not just quietly frustrated. Furious. And who was he directing that anger at? Kevin Stefanski. Sources say Garrett blew up over the coach's persistent support for Gabriel, despite his poor performance and the increasingly fragile state of the locker room. From Garrett's perspective, the favoritism wasn't just annoying, it was sabotaging the team. And the rest of the players? They weren't exactly rallying behind Stefanski either. Inside the locker room, sides were forming. Some backed Garrett, tired of the excuses and double standards. Others stayed silent, unsure which way the wind was blowing. But the unity was gone. You could feel it, even from the outside. The Browns weren't just losing games. They were unraveling. Then came the trade rumors, and they weren't subtle. Word started spreading that powerful teams, big market, high-stakes teams like the Philadelphia Eagles and New England Patriots, were seriously eyeing Garrett. They weren't just sending feelers. They were making calls. And the Browns? They weren't shutting it down. Instead, they slapped a price tag on him. 3 first-round picks and a player. That's not how you treat your defensive MVP unless you're at DEFCON 1 behind closed doors. This wasn't about strategy. This was about desperation. For Garrett, the signal was clear. The front office was either preparing for a future without him or trying to scare him into silence. Either way, it backfired. Because if there was any hope of mending the tension, that vanished the second his name hit the trade market. Let's be real. This isn't just any player. Myles Garrett is the Browns' defense. He's not replaceable, and the fans know it. Trading him wouldn't just hurt the roster. It would crater team morale, gut the locker room, and send the entire franchise into a tailspin. And yet, here we are, with Garrett reportedly considering a trade request his own if the dysfunction continues. And who could blame him? He's out there dominating games while the offense coughs up chances, and the coaching staff refuses to acknowledge the dysfunction. It's one thing to be part of a rebuild. It's another to be stuck in a cycle of denial, favoritism, and flat-out bad decisions. Meanwhile, Stefanski's refusal to change course is only deepening the chaos. Despite all the noise, he's doubling down on Gabriel. The defense is holding things together by a thread, and the offense is practically handing games away. Garrett's frustration isn't just emotional. It's logical. He's watching a playoff-caliber defense being wasted week after week by stubborn leadership. And fans? They've had it. Cleveland isn't known for holding back when it comes to their football team. And right now they're furious. Social media is exploding with backlash. Protest posts, petitions. People are rallying behind Garrett, not Stefanski. Fans are calling for the coach's removal, questioning management, and demanding accountability. The vibe? One bad decision away from full-blown revolt. But instead of listening, the Browns front office appears locked into pride mode. They're not addressing the locker room's collapse. They're not publicly backing Garrett. And they're certainly not calming the trade rumors. The whole operation feels like a powder keg with no safety lid. What's worse is the message this sends, not just to Garrett, but to the rest of the league. If a team can't even manage to keep its best player happy while he's performing at an elite level, what does that say about the organization? It tells players across the NFL, Cleveland can't protect its own. The fallout is already in motion. Trust in leadership, crumbling. Locker room culture, poison. Star player loyalty, hanging by a thread. All the signs of franchise teetering on the edge of collapse are flashing bright red. And the thing is, this could have been avoided. All of it, if Stefanski had addressed the locker room tension early. If the front office had reassured Garrett instead of dangling him on the trade block. If leadership had been willing to adjust rather than double down on bad decisions. But none of that happened. Instead, they stayed the course, ignored the red flags, and watched as their most important players started looking toward the exit. And if Garrett does leave, it's not just a talent loss. It's an identity crisis. He is the Browns' defensive identity. His departure would signal to the league and to the fans that Cleveland isn't just struggling, it's broken. And the timing couldn't be worse. With major franchises like the Eagles and Patriots circling like sharks, the pressure is mounting. These aren't rebuilding teams. They're championship-hungry and aggressive. If Garrett lands in a new city, he'll instantly elevate that defense. And the Browns? They'll be left trying to fill a void that can't be filled. That's the irony. They're demanding a king's ransom for Garrett, which proves how much they know he's worth. But if he's that valuable, why let things get this far? Why risk losing the very foundation of your franchise just to protect a quarterback who hasn't shown up when it counts? The answer, unfortunately, is pride. Pride in leadership. Pride in decisions. Pride in a vision that's no longer working. And that pride may end up costing them everything. Because the Browns aren't just risking one bad season. They're risking years of rebuilding, shattered trust, and a fan base that's already halfway out the door. Garrett isn't just a great player. He's the last thread holding this team together. And if he leaves, he'll take more than just sacks and stats with him. He'll take hope. And once that's gone, it's a long, dark road back. Let us know what you think. Should the Browns keep Garrett at all costs, or is it already too late to fix this mess? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you're watching this whole thing unfold in disbelief. And don't forget to subscribe for more breakdowns of the biggest meltdowns in sports and pop culture. Because this is one for the books. Because believe it or not, this is still just scratching the surface of the Browns' latest meltdown. The Myles Garrett drama is the headline, but what's brewing underneath is a kind of organizational rot that doesn't just happen overnight. This is years of tension, mismanagement, and unchecked egos finally boiling over. Now, here's where things go from bad to potentially irreversible. You've got Garrett, one of the most dominant defensive players in the league, not just throwing shade, but openly challenging the direction of the team. And this isn't about personal stats or fame. The guy is producing in spite of the chaos around him. 5 sacks in one game? That's not just elite, that's generational. He's showing up, he's doing the job, and he's still being treated like he's the problem. So ask yourself, what message does that send? If someone like Garrett, who's pouring his soul into the team, can't even get a straight answer from the front office or feel like his concerns are taken seriously, why would any player trust the system? This isn't just a player-coach beef. It's a full-blown culture crisis. You've got leadership making tone-deaf decisions. You've got a locker room splintering apart. And worst of all, you've got silence from the top. Where's ownership in all this? Because when your franchise star is getting shopped around like he's on clearance at a yard sale, and when fans are practically begging for someone, anyone, to take responsibility, the absolute worst thing you can do is hide behind a PR filter and hope it blows over. Spoiler, it's not going to. And what makes it even more brutal is how loyal Cleveland fans are. These aren't fair weather types. This fan base has stuck around through quarterback chaos, playoff droughts, and enough false starts to write a whole separate series. But this, watching leadership alienate the heart of the team while clinging to a quarterback who's barely holding the offense together, that's betrayal. The frustration isn't just on the field, it's personal. People are showing up every week, rain or snow, paying real money, buying jerseys, yelling from the stands, and in return, they're watching a team implode from the inside out. It's demoralizing. Garrett has been one of the few reasons to believe. So when his name hits the trade wire, fans don't just get nervous, they get angry. And let's talk about that trade value for a second. 3 first-round picks and a player. That's blockbuster territory. That's reset your franchise kind of value. Which only proves the point. The Browns know exactly how important Garrett is. They're not trying to give him away. They want the moon in return. And yet, they're still entertaining the possibility of moving him. To why? Because somewhere in that building, someone has decided that appeasing egos and clinging to bad calls is worth more than fixing what's obviously broken. And here's the catch. Even if they don't trade Garrett, the damage might already be done. Once a player like that starts to feel alienated, it's hard to come back from. Once trust erodes between star talent and leadership, it doesn't just magically rebuild with a locker room speech or a few wins. It festers, it lingers, and eventually it leads to exits, whether by trade, free agency, or burnout. And let's be real, Garrett has options. Teams like Philly and New England, they're not calling because they're bored. They see blood in the water. They see a franchise in disarray with a frustrated star on the edge. And they know exactly how rare it is to have a shot at someone like Garrett. He's the kind of player that changes everything. Your scheme, your locker room, your Super Bowl odds. He's a multiplier. And teams with solid front offices, competent coaching, and playoff aspirations are foaming at the mouth for a shot. Meanwhile, back in Cleveland, the spiral continues. Because while this circus is going on, what's happening with the rest of the team? Internal chaos isn't just noise. It's a virus. Players start second-guessing the playbook. Coaches start pointing fingers. Morale tanks. And suddenly, even the winnable games slip through the cracks. All because the leadership refuses to make a change, admit a mistake, or even show some transparency. And what about Dylan Gabriel? Let's not sugarcoat it. He hasn't delivered. The offense has been a mess. The decision-making has been shaky, and game after game, you can see the tension on the field. Garrett's not frustrated because he's a diva. He's frustrated because he's watching the same cycle repeat itself. Strong defense, wasted potential, bad execution, and zero accountability. Stefanski's stubbornness isn't just annoying, it's destructive. By continuing to back a quarterback who isn't getting the job done, and by ignoring one of the best defensive players in the league, he's sending a crystal clear message. Performance doesn't matter here. Loyalty does. And that's how teams lose not just games, but seasons. And maybe that's the saddest part, because this roster should be good. There's talent all over the field. They've got the kind of defense other teams would kill for. But none of it matters if the team is being run like a reality show with no exit strategy. So where do they go from here? Well, if the Browns are serious about salvaging anything from this season, or this era, they need to make a decision. Not about Garrett. About leadership. About culture. About whether they want to keep spiraling out of control, or finally hit pause and face what's actually happening inside that building. Because right now, it's not just about keeping Garrett. It's about keeping anyone who still believes in what this franchise is supposed to stand for. The clock's ticking. And if they blow this, If they let pride win over logic, then this won't just be the Myles Garrett era ending. It'll be the beginning of another decade-long rebuild. And let's be honest, no one in Cleveland deserves to sit through that again. Now, if you're thinking, maybe this will all blow over, let's be clear, it won't. This isn't just some locker room squabble or star player having a bad week. This is a foundational breakdown. This is trust being shattered between one of the NFL's most dominant defenders and the very organization he's carried on his back for years. And the Browns? They're acting like this is business as usual. There's no urgency, no crisis mode press conference, no sincere public backing of Myles Garrett, just silence. And maybe that's the most damning part, because silence in the middle of chaos, that's not calm leadership. That's a red flag waving in HD. You got Myles Garrett in his prime, outperforming everyone around him while dragging this team into games they had no business being in. A 5-sack game in the middle of a team implosion? That's not noise. That's a statement. And instead of saying, we're building around this guy, the front office is floating his name out for 3 first-round picks like a fantasy draft. Do they really think this is sustainable? You don't just swap out a player like Myles Garrett. You don't go next man up when the man you're talking about is anchoring your entire defense. This isn't just another roster slot. This is your identity. This is the only consistent thing in a franchise known for inconsistency. And let's not forget, this situation is happening while the Browns are already sitting on a pile of unresolved tension. There's no unified locker room, no clear offensive direction, no leadership presence that players trust. So yeah, when Garrett reportedly exploded over how things were being handled, especially Stefanski's undying loyalty to a quarterback who isn't producing, it wasn't just frustration. It was a last straw, because this isn't just about Gabriel underperforming. This is about what his protection symbolizes. To Garrett and a lot of others in that locker room, it looks like favoritism. It looks like accountability only applies to certain players, while others get unlimited chances regardless of results. And once that perception sets in, you lose the locker room. Period. Leadership is about consistency. It's about fairness. When players see double standards, when they see coaches protecting their hand-picked projects while ignoring the damage, it destroys the culture from within. And right now, the Browns don't have a culture. They have a standoff. Myles Garrett is standing on one side, demanding standards, performance, and respect. Kevin Stefanski and the front office are on the other side, clinging to a system that isn't working, backing a quarterback who's losing the locker room, and entertaining trade offers for the only guys still giving them hope. And what happens when the locker room watches this unfold? They lose faith. Faith in the process. Faith in the coaches. Faith in the team. It's one thing to go through a rough season. Every team does. But when the people run the show can't admit what's broken, when they protect their pride over the truth, it turns rough seasons into lost decades. And if you think this ends with Garrett, think again. The NFL is a tight community. Players talk. Agents talk. If this continues, Cleveland risks becoming that team, the one players avoid, the one known for wasting talent, mismanaging stars, and turning potential into regret. We've seen it happen before. Star players leave, citing differences with management. Teams deny everything, blame it on changing directions, and fans are left watching their franchise spiral while ownership stays locked in the past. The blueprint is all too familiar. But what makes this even worse is that they knew better. Garrett is not just a leader on the field. He's been a voice in the locker room. He's been the bridge between new talent and veterans. He's been loyal, patient, publicly supportive. So when a guy like that starts calling out the coaching staff, that's not drama. That's a red alert. And still, radio silence from the front office. Meanwhile, fan protests are escalating. Media coverage is relentless. Social media is a battlefield. Brown's nation is in full revolt, rallying behind Garrett, calling for Stefanski's job, and demanding the organization explain itself. And the worst part? There's still no plan. If Garrett does leave, whether by trade or pure exhaustion, what then? Who becomes the face of the team? Who becomes a leader in that locker room? Who rallies this fractured team when things get hard? Nobody. Because leadership isn't something you plug and play. You can't just replace culture. Garrett's not just bringing sacks. He's bringing structure. He's bringing stability. And without him, you're back to square one. Again. All because a coach couldn't admit that maybe, just maybe, he backed the wrong quarterback. All because the front office decided being right was more important than being smart. It's a dangerous game. And it's not just about wins or losses anymore. It's about reputation. It's about identity. It's about what kind of organization the Browns want to be. Because right now, they're looking like the kind of team that chews through generational talent and calls it strategy. And Garrett, he's watching. Every move, every leak, every decision. And if the goal was to push him out quietly, it's not working. The opposite is happening. He's becoming the lightning rod for a franchise-wide reckoning. The face of a fan base that's had enough of bad decisions, mixed messages, and wasted years. He hasn't demanded a trade yet, but he doesn't need to. The pressure he's applying is louder than any formal request. And if the Browns don't figure this out fast, they're going to find themselves on the wrong end of the most avoidable loss of the season. Let's be clear. They need Garrett more than he needs them. There are teams right now that would roll out the red carpet for him. Defensive coordinators who would build entire systems around his skill set. Owners who'd make him the centerpiece. Teammates who would back him from day one. Because they know players like Myles Garrett don't just grow on trees. And if Cleveland lets this fall apart, if they let pride, dysfunction, and mismanagement push out the one guy still fighting for them, that's not just bad football. That's franchise malpractice. So here we are. The Browns are at a crossroads. They can fix this if they want to, if they're willing to make tough decisions, if they're willing to listen to players, if they're willing to course correct before it's too late. But let's be honest. When was the last time the Browns chose the hard right over the easy wrong? You watching this unfold in disbelief? Feel like you've seen this movie before? Let's talk about it in the comments. Hit like if you're rooting for Garrett to either get justice or get out. And don't forget to subscribe. We got more meltdowns coming because this league, it never sleeps.